So let's just say that you're out there on this podcast and you're just talking about against child sex trafficking, or you're talking about a larger carbon footprint, or you're talking about religious freedom, or you're talking about child transmutations or anything like that, right? Anything that's against what they want, they could say, okay, we're not going to let you use your money. You're just this tokenized packet of all of your information. It's now gone.
Your money won't be your money. Get ready for the end of cash, digital currency, and the making of a new shift in wealth. Poverty and control is coming your way, or I should say coming our way, the whole world. So I want to welcome to the show Dr. Kirk Elliott. He's from kirkelliottphd.com. He consults in financial matters and has a company and a team in Colorado called Private Advisors. He's a prolific speaker on financial trends and wants to warn people to prepare for what is coming. So I guess my first question to you is, what is coming?
Oh boy. What's coming is something that we've never seen before, right? So you go back to 1930. So the Bank of International Settlements, which is the central bank of all central banks globally, they started. And what was their goal? What was their stated objective? Is to bring all these central banks together to talk about how we can bring monetary stability to the rest of the world. But who's the owner of the Bank for International Settlements? It's 63 central banks from around the world. So they're just the mouthpiece for what the central banks want to get done, right? But now that's just more, I say, modern day. I mean, it was 1930 when that happened, but this is what we're going to be talking about today. A lot of it has to do with what the Bank for International Settlements is pushing down people's throats, basically, and saying you will be forced to comply, and we're not going to really like it. So if you go back to, let's go back to 2019. So, and this is going to be in the United States, but this is when kind of things all really started, right, across the globe, because I'm just using the United States as an example because I have legislative action and docket numbers and everything where we can explain it. But across the board, 110 central banks around the world are moving towards central bank digital currency. So here, and the language is going to be very similar from country to country to country, which is why I'm okay just talking about the federal dockets from the United States, because central banks digital currency is the same no matter where you look. They all have the same stated objective. So what in Federal Reserve docket number OP 1670 from August 9th of 2019. See, people think this has been going on for a long, long time. It's like, no, this is all like happening at supernatural speed, right? Where this has all been going on for just like 3.5 years, and look at where we are. So in this docket, they basically unraveled and spoke about the FedNow app. So the FedNow app is the conduit from you and your money. It's an app on your phone. It's the tunnel from you and your money to the central bank digital currency repository, which is the debit and credit system. It's going to be our new currency. So they said, we've got this whole central bank digital currency, like the vault for people's money, and ready. But now we need a conduit from you and your money to fund it and to get it there, right? And so that actually came into existence on April 1st of this year. The Federal Reserve started deploying it. They said they were going to deploy it between 4 international money center banks like HSBC, Wells Fargo, and some others, but they actually did over 50 banks in their beta test. So it's much more widespread than what people would think. So when you go back to 2019, what did they say? They talked about the definition of money, how it's a unit of exchange, it's a means of exchange, it has a store of value, which that's what it is. I mean, you have a $5 bill, a $20 bill, a $100 bill. It's got a unit of exchange. You hope that when you have cash in your hand that it's going to be worth something down the road. So it's a store of value, and you can use it to trade back and forth for goods and services, for food, for your utility bill, for your satellite bill, right? Whatever. So that's what money is for. But they added a fourth definition to money, and that is social control. It's like, what? Since when does money have anything to do with social control? Well, the answer is since when they want it to, because they're the ones that control the purse strings, right? So we have to keep that in mind as we look at some of these other things on this timeline. And this is more of a timeline I'm going to go through. So that was August 9th of 2019. March 9th of 2022 in America, President Biden issued Executive Order 14067. It was basically what said central bank digital currency was going to be the thing of America from the Federal Reserve moving forward. And the title of that was Ensuring Responsible Deployment of Digital Assets. So now we've got this FedNow app that they had in development for a couple of years. And then March of 2022, they decided, all right, we're going to unleash central bank digital currency on the citizens of America. But they were a little bit slow because China has already done it. Other countries have already done it. There's at that point, there was over 80 central banks globally that were already working on it, right? But now you've got 110 plus central banks working on this. So let's fast forward a little bit further. Now it becomes more global. So March 29th of 2022, Dr. Pippa Malmgren, chief economist for the World Economic Forum, speaking at the World Government Summit in Abu Dhabi, explained, now this is the first time programmable money came into the conversation. So she said, central bank digital currency is coming. It's right around the corner. It's right underneath our nose. It's not like 5, 10, 20 years down the road. She said, it's right here, and it's programmable money. By that, I mean, it's tied to your digital social profile. If we don't like your digital social profile, your social credit score, your ESGs, if you're a company, how you spend your money, well, then we can cut you off from buying or selling.
Okay, I want to interrupt you because I want you to explain to everybody what a social credit score is. They haven't heard about what we know that's being implemented now in China and how it controls people. So
how you spend your money is the mirror reflection of you to the world, right? Because what we spend our money on shows us what we value. It shows us what we are and who we are and who we donate to. What religious institution we give to and we give our tithes to. It talks about your social credit score talks about, do you have a large carbon footprint or do you have a small one? Do you have a gas guzzling truck or do you have an electric vehicle? It talks about your preferences on what you eat, right? It talks about your preferences on what kind of medicine do you take or not take, right? I mean, it's the reflection of you. So your social credit score is all of that basically put into one packet of information that now the rest of the world is going to know about. So just like a regular credit score, it has to do with your income and your debt and your spending. That's all part of it, right? It's all part of your digital social profile. But like, have you been vaccinated or not? Have you had boosters or not? Do you have a health passport or not, right? All of this goes into that social credit score, right? What political party do you give to or are you part of? What do you talk about on your podcasts, right? I mean, all of this starts adding up into our digital version of ourselves that's out there for everybody to see. The fact that it's out there for everybody to see, and you've got people who want to cut you off from your own money if they don't like who you are, should start to be a little bit scary, because that's, we have freedom of religion. We should be able to worship the way that we want to, and we should have the ability to spend money the way that we want to. Nobody should care how we spend our money, right? But yet they do, because they have a different agenda. They want all of this that we're talking about. See, central bank digital currency is being messaged as a way to fix a broken financial system, right? It's going to bring transparency. It's going to bring accountability to a broken world. It's going, but yet it's not about that. See, and I can prove it in one paragraph. So,
Okay.
so central bank digital currencies right now are basically a digital format of paper money, right? So it's owned by the same people, the same central banks. Central banks now under a fiat-based money where they can print money at will. That's what fiat means. Is basically how hard is it to create $1 trillion in paper money? Well, it takes a lot, right? You have to make the paper, you have to put it through the printing press, you have to put ink on it, you have to cut it, you have to band it up and get it to the banks. It's kind of hard to make $1 trillion. How hard is it to make $1 trillion in digital money? You just have some guy or gal sitting at a computer and they hit the zero a bunch of times, enter. Look at it, I just created $1 trillion of inflation in less than 2 seconds. It's way easier to have these disruptions, right? So we're going down that path really quickly because it's all about people control. When it's digital, it's about control because they can see it. Now, I'm going to validate that statement as well. So you go to March 6th of 2023. So we're moving along the calendar here, right? So Bank for International Settlements, Project Icebreaker. So globally, you have a SWIFT system. It's the mechanism for banks to send wires back and forth to each other. They're wanting to replace that with something in Project Icebreaker that actually is like a bank wire, except the use of funds at the end is tied to an ideology. And they said, if your ideology of the use of funds doesn't match up with ours, we'll just stop the bank wire. It's like, oof, okay, they're getting pretty bold in those statements.
For
right?
example, give an example.
Let's just say you're here in America and you donated to the Trump presidential campaign. It's like, wait a second, that Dr. Kirk guy, he's given to this Donald Trump character, and this Trump guy, he's not in it for social justice. He doesn't care about the rest of the world. He doesn't care about having a small carbon footprint. He doesn't care about the green energy and agenda or Agenda 2030 or any of this. In fact, he stopped funding the World Health Organization. Therefore, his high ideology doesn't match up with ours. We're just going to stop that donation from happening. Or let's take it even one step further. It's like, let's just say you drive a big truck that uses a lot of gas and you only get 8 miles per gallon. And they say, oof, boy, those people there, they don't care about the rest of the world and how they're polluting the environment. Their carbon footprint's way too big. We're going to not let them buy gas anymore. Boop, flip of a switch. When it's digital and they know the vendors, they know what you're spending money on. It's easy to do that.
So who makes these decisions? You're making a purchase right now for a gas guzzling car. Is it the clerk in the bank that makes the decision, or is it's a set of laws and it's plugged into the computer system and it doesn't let purchases go through? How does that work? How would it work?
I would say it's not a person. It's not some employee at the Bank for International Settlements. Right. So we've seen a lot of artificial intelligence, chat GPT, all this open AI infrastructure recently. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be a computer determining. And how does the computer know? Because somebody programmed it in, right? So it all comes from a person individual, but it's not going to be a boiler room, a warehouse full of people looking at every single transaction globally. It's just going to be a computer, which this is where it becomes really scary, because the creator of open artificial intelligence, basically has been getting cold feet on his creation. It's like Frankenstein's monster, right? Wait a second. We have to slow this train down because computers are getting too smart and they might have the ability to outthink humans and destroy their creator. It reminds me of the Terminator movie, the first one, where Skynet was out there and the computers decided they're going to wage war against their humans, their creators, and they created all these machines to actually, it was just 20 plus years ago that this movie was made. Now it's actually happening, where computers can write manuscripts, they can write books, they could be the best lawyers in the world, right? Because they can look at every single precedent ever in the history and craft together some kind of a thing. This is how they're doing it. But What do computers not have? They don't have intuition. They don't have a soul. They don't have wisdom. They don't have what God put in each and every one of us when we were created. Because how many times have you made a decision where it's like, oh, and I've had these, it's like, might not make financial sense, but I've just got a gut feeling about this one. And you decide to do it, right? And it turned out to be the right decision. You lose all of that when a computer is making decisions. There's no grace, there's no mercy, there's no wisdom. It's just black and white and a 1 or a 0. It's a computer, it's an algorithm that somebody programmed right now.
And there's nobody to even appeal to after this decision is made.
No, but there's huge movement into the AI community, because if you were a company like Microsoft or Amazon, it's like, wow, I don't have to pay this computer. There's no wages, there's no benefits. I don't have to worry about a discrimination suit coming my way at some point for any reason. We don't have to worry about hiring or firing. But here's the problem. You hire a computer for free that can do the work of people, right? So that's how they like it. But yet there's no wages being earned. There's no income tax revenue coming to the government from there. There's no sales tax revenues from those computers going to Best Buy and buying some stuff, right? They don't buy anything. They don't make money for themselves. They don't buy houses. So we're in a world where the government expenditures are increasing. We're almost like the welfare state's just mushrooming because these people are losing their jobs to computers, right? So now what's going to happen? They're going to go to the government and say, I lost my job forever. I need unemployment benefits. I need Social Security. I need welfare. I need this. I need that. And there's no money coming in from an offsetting job. So I think that the drain on government resources is going to be huge. I think the drain on society is going to be huge. Estimates right now are that 50%, 50, of the United States and Europe will be unemployed within 10 years, replaced by computers. The estimate is 20% of all jobs globally are going to be replaced by computers within the next 10 years. This is going to be a huge social impact on the world, right? But oh, don't worry, they've got it covered. They've got this figured out, right? Because they've got systems in place, right? So how do they measure all this stuff? As we go march down this road to central bank digital currency, you've got May 31st of 2023, the Bank for International Settlements, again, with Project Aurora, says we are going to monitor every transaction in real time from every person at every company at every bank in every country. Well, that's pretty much everybody that has a bank account. Okay, now we go one step further, June 20th of this year. See, this is all happening pretty quick, right? Which is the Bank for International Settlements now unleashed what's called a unified ledger. So the unified ledger is a tokenization process. So in the digital currency world, in cryptocurrency, tokenization just simply means it's not like a coin token, right? It's a it's a computer term that brings all of your data, all your financial information, your real estate purchases, assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, cash into a packet, and they seal it up, right? So like Bitcoin, which is a decentralized cryptocurrency, you don't know the source of the funds, you don't know the use of the funds, you don't even know who the owner is of that packet. It's because of the algorithms and the encoding on it. They don't know. It's completely private. In a central bank digital currency world, the opposite is true. They control the data. They know the source of the funds. They know the use of the funds. They know the owner. And unlike Bitcoin, for example, that's non-programmable and immutable, meaning you can't change anything in that packet once it's done. So it's off limits, right? This tokenization process, this unified ledger, they can change ownership on the packet. So if they don't like you based on your ideology, every law that we've talked about so far, well, then they'll just change ownership to the government away from you. This is the danger that we're seeing. So when are we going to see all of this? Well, it's happening now, right? So under this plan, they want it to go live by September 15th of 2024 at the latest. See, in the United Nations has actually said, well, we're going to announce to the rest of the world the UN Pact for the Future September 22nd through the 24th of 2024. By September 15th, 1 week before that, we will actually have everybody having a global digital ID card that's biometric identified, that's tied to everybody's bank accounts, right? So here's where this starts to get really, really creepy, in my opinion, because when you start reading news from the United Nations and Bank for International Settlements, let me talk about for 1 second just the programmable feature of the money. So let's just say that you're out there on this podcast and you're just talking about against child sex trafficking, or you're talking about a larger carbon footprint, or you're talking about religious freedom, or you're talking about child transmutations or anything like that, right? Anything that's against what they want, they could say, okay, we're not going to let you use your money. You're just this tokenized packet of all of your information. It's now gone. Now, they go a little bit farther, because we've heard statements in the past that from them that say you're going to own nothing and you're going to like it. It's like, what? I mean, seriously, how could I own nothing when I like it? It's my money. I've worked really hard. So here's where you go back to March of this year. These notes are just coming out like within the last 2 weeks, though, but this meeting was held in March of the United Nations. The UN Secretary General says this, and I quote, "I propose that the General Assembly of the United Nations provide the Secretary General and the United Nations system with a standing authority to convene and operationalize automatically an emergency platform in the event of a future complex global shock of sufficient scale, severity, and reach." It's like, okay, that's open to interpretation. What is that size of a shock? Well, they explain it. We don't have to speculate, because the next paragraph they said, oh, well, what could cause this emergency authority? A major climatic event, future pandemic risk, a global digital connectivity disruption, a major event in outer space, and generic unforeseen risks, black swan events. It goes on to say that this is going to be messaged to the stakeholders of the world. Who are the stakeholders? They say who that is too. It's academics, it's governments, it's private sector actors, and international financial institutions. Now, these emergency powers that they're giving themselves, that the presidents of countries, the prime ministers of countries have actually given up their sovereign right as a leader of a country to some person who has a job at the Bank for International Settlements or at the UN to say, oh, you can decide these things on my behalf. You know, it's okay. You know, you're not elected or anything. You just simply have a job, but you can make decisions for the world. That's okay, right? What president would do that? Well, most of them in the United Nations have signed off on this stupid stuff, right? So here's where this Emergency Powers Act, they took it one step further. Like COVID, that they said, okay, this is going to end in 6 months. It's like, how do they know, right? So they have this ending time frame. This law said, based on the UN's discretion, we can make these emergency powers indefinite if we want to, right? So the ability to cut you off from buying or selling based on your ideology, you don't have access to your money for an indefinite period of time, forever, if that's what they determine. Oof, this is not the Hunger Games, some kind of a dystopian future movie. This is actually happening right here, right now. These are all the legislative actions, the administrative rulings from all these institutions, most of which are not tied to a particular country. They're globalist organizations that are pulling in everybody. I don't care if you're in Israel, in the United States, in Germany, in Australia, wherever you are, they're pulling this into this system, which is all about people control.
I want to backtrack for a moment and ask you, you were mentioning that all of these presidents and prime ministers and leaders of different countries are all stepping in line for this. They're agreeing to it. What is making them agree to it? What is making them be willing to give up the sovereignty of their own nation?
I think it's just their ideology, their worldview, the power that comes with the control of people. I guess power is an enticing siren song, right? That just lures people in. Who knows what they're being promised? But I mean, we can or maybe it's a God complex. I don't know. But hearing some of the stuff that Biden has been saying, he wants to block the sun, right? Because he thinks that global warming is too much. And then, so they've got these plans with different scientists to spray some kind of sulfur into the atmosphere and make the clouds more reflective so the sun goes away. But the problem is, they said, well, we don't really know what the ramifications could be. We think it's going to raise the levels of the sea, and all coastal cities and areas are going to be underwater. It's like, wait, I thought that came from global warming, not global cooling. But I guess it could happen from, I mean, seriously, they come up with stuff. And then he was asked last October, he was actually at an ice cream shop, and a reporter came up to him and he was licking his double scoop ice cream cone. It's like, hey, President Biden, are you concerned about the demise of the US dollar? This was in October of last year. And his answer was a flat out, no, I'm not. I'm more concerned about the global economy, faltering. It's like, okay, what country are you the president of, right? So I don't know if this answers your question, but there's this globalist push, this gravity towards having these institutions, give up their sovereignty. These countries, these presidents give up their sovereign authority to a globalist institution. Who knows what they've been promised? Who knows? Yeah. I don't know.
I would think it's perhaps more the carrot and the stick, that, they'll promise them, a bank account in the Cayman Islands and your family's to be taken care of. And if you don't go along with it, we know where your children go to school. We know what route they take. We know what time they go. You don't want to have anything happen to your children or your grandchildren, do you? And so it's like coming both ways, because I can't imagine that a leader of a country would want to be told what to do by the UN or by the MEF or whatever it is, because countries, peoples, they want to, like in the European Union, with Brexit, the British left because they didn't like a bunch of bureaucrats sitting in Strasbourg or Belgium or wherever, telling them what they have to do, where their fishermen can fish, where this can happen, where that can happen. They're not elected officials. They don't represent them at all. And so on the people level, at least, I could really see a resistance to this. So let me ask you some practical situations that maybe you can explain to us, because if indeed they do take cash away, and they say cash is king, because as you said, even with credit cards today, we can buy things digitally with a credit card, but it's not instant. Like you said, I can first make the purchase and only later will the bank know where the purchase was and approve the purchase or not. But I've already got it. But I'm just wondering, if cash is gone, how does daily life look, in the sense where I want to hire a babysitter? She's 12 years old. She doesn't have a bank account. She doesn't have an iPhone or a cell phone. How does it work where you want to pay things that obviously would be in cash like we've been used to, and you can't do that anymore?
Well, that becomes a problem, right? And I don't think some of the solutions have been fully identified yet, but I do know of one, and that's in other countries where their currency have collapsed: Venezuela, Argentina, Cyprus, Greece, right? What did their people do? They still need to live. They still need to survive. If you own a t-shirt shop or a restaurant or anything, it's like, I don't want this junk currency, right? But I still need to survive. So they're taking things for barter. I mean, you could barter pretty much anything. You could barter with vodka or cigarettes or eggs, or if you're a rancher, or meat or whatever. So silver for barter is awesome. Number one, it's small, it's portable, it has a unified size. People know what it's worth. So in a worst case scenario, like what you're explaining, use silver for barter. It's always been a de facto currency, right? And you just take possession of it and you have it in your pocket. You can trade it back and forth. Now, there's current legislation pending in numerous states, Texas and Alaska for one, in America, where they're looking to propose a state chartered bank away from the federal system, away from FDIC, away from this FedNow app. And Texas in particular wants their bank backed by gold, right? So a state chartered bank away from federal insurance, away from all of those tentacles that come from that. And this is where I think sovereign states' rights are rising up, because it's not just Texas and Alaska. Ron DeSantis in Florida said Florida's not going to accept central bank digital currency at all. It's too bad, so sad for them, right? And then Arkansas, Oklahoma, Utah, Wyoming, Louisiana, numerous states are all now saying gold can be legal tender in our states. So you're starting to see an uprising of states' rights and them basically taking control of their own financial destiny. And I think that that will offer somewhat of a solution, but none of it is really engaged yet. There's not a state chartered central bank yet that actually works, but it's coming. But what is here right now is tangible assets like gold and silver. It's not a digital asset. You're not a digital slave in their digital world. It's not paper. It's not a certificate. It's not a digit. It's actually something physical that you would take delivery of. So, or you store it. If it's in an IRA or retirement plan, you have to store it, but it's still the same physical material. 1,000-ounce bars of silver, 100-ounce bars of silver, 10-ounce bars of silver, 1-ounce gold bars, kilo bars, right? We're talking about getting out of a paper system into a tangible one that's private. When you take delivery of it, it becomes private. You're no longer this digital entity that they can flip off with a switch.
So when you talk about tangible assets and you're talking about gold and silver, et cetera, who's to say that in another 2 years, the government decides no one is allowed to own gold anymore? Flat law, you're not allowed to. What do you do?
Well, they did that in the 1930s, but yet people still had gold. See, people who are owning gold, if the government says that, what are they probably going to say? Well, they're going to say, over my dead body, I'm not giving you my stuff. I'm going to use it to live on, to barter with, right? So if you have it, you have it. But here's where the bigger gist of that statement is more of a overarching across the board. What if you don't have it on you? You've got it stored at a depository in an IRA because it's a lot, right? You have a larger account. Well, I don't think that the government's going to confiscate gold or silver. I really don't, because it's to us, it's a means for freedom moving forward, to regain our religious, economic, political freedom, because it's tied to what we spend or what we give to, right? But to them, only 2% of America owns gold, only 0.9% owns silver. It's not big enough. If they're going to do a confiscatory action, they're going to focus on the masses. The bank accounts that 98% of America has, the brokerage accounts, right? The checking accounts, savings accounts, because that's a flip of a switch. And they could say, and they've already penned this into legislation through the Dodd-Frank bill, under Obama. In other countries, they've already utilized this mechanism. Instead of a government bailout, it's a bail-in, right? Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary of the United States, during the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, said, you know what? Too big to fail? No, there's nothing that's too big to fail. But where the government's not going to bail these things out anymore, these big banks, we're going to do bail-ins and let the depositors at those banks bail them out, right? Well, okay, a bail-in is just simply still a bailout of a company, but it's not done by the government. It's done by people, right? It's taking it from us to pay for somebody else's mistake. See, if they want to confiscate, it's because they need money. If they need money, they're not going to go after something that only 2% of the population owns, or 0.9%, and it's hard to get because you physically have to move it. They'll go after something that 98% of the population has. It's a flip of a switch. You don't even have to leave your office to get it done. That's how I think a modern day confiscation will look.
Let me give you an example. Maybe you can detail it more. Let's say that I have gold. I don't want the government telling me where I can spend my money, what I can do with it. And I want to support Donald Trump, let's say, okay? And I go to a printing shop and I tell them, I want you to make all of these posters for Donald Trump. And I give them the gold because I don't even want the government to know that I'm doing this. And then the printing shop gets some type of letter from the government saying, you have used this and this amount of materials, ink, paper, whatever it is, and you didn't have anything come in that was registered that we saw that you sold this. And therefore, it's kind of like cheating on your income tax, let's say, there's like, you cheated. What did you do here? I mean, I think even if it's only 2% of the population, if that 2% is making a difference, they're not controllable, they're going to be targeted, just like you had with the pandemic, where they just shut people down, and they purposely focus on the people who didn't get this in their arm. Those are the people that they targeted. So what's to say that if you're going to stand strong and say, well, I'm not going to be a patsy, I'm going to have gold and silver, that you're not going to specifically be targeted, even though you're only 2% of the population?
So you probably will be specifically targeted, and the easy thing for them to do is shut you off from your bank accounts or your retirement plans or your brokerage, or through the Fed Now app. Let's say you're on Social Security and saying, we're not going to let you receive your Social Security benefits or anything like that, right? But what they don't know about if a gold to silver transaction is private, they don't really know that you have it, right? So it's going to be difficult to cut you off from that. Not difficult to cut you off identifying that person, identifying you or me or somebody else, right? And saying, okay, no more access to your bank account. That's what's going to be easy for them. It's not going to be super easy to find out what kind of things that you have, right? That you've already purchased. I mean, because they're things, once you bought them, it's like, are they going to know that you own 8 trash cans or a lawnmower or gold or silver, or how much food is in your fridge? They probably won't, right? Because it's just a thing, right? Or if you purchase seeds and you grow a garden, are they going to know how big your garden is? They going to know how I mean, they don't
They might know
know
how much water you're using to water your garden,
So
right?
they
How much
shut you off
soil
from
and
your, they
fertilizer
can
you're
shut you
buying.
off from your
But
water.
it could also be that other companies are not going to want to work with you and accept your gold because they can get in trouble. Just like during the pandemic, there were stores that would not let people in unless they could show their green passport, proof
Right.
of this.
Yeah.
So
So almost like where there's a will, there's a way. And there's a lot of people who think like us. There's patriots all over the world, freedom-loving people, God-fearing people, right? And they're going to say, we're not taking this system. I mean, there's like, it's the mark of the beast for libertarians. It's like, this is complete intrusion on our bank accounts. It's like Big Brother in our bank accounts, right? We're not going to play this game. So you're going to have all kinds of people that are, I think, an alternative parallel system will establish itself almost overnight, because where there's a will, there's a way, right? There's a lot of people. And I mean, you're not going to be able to go to your Walmarts of the world or Costco's or Targets or, some of these big box stores, because they will be tied into the central bank digital currency system. But I think there's going to be smaller merchants, t-shirt shops, small grocery stores, maybe independent gas stations that they'll say, we don't want this. We want something that's real, something that's valuable, especially in a hyperinflation. They don't necessarily even have to believe purely with the ideology or the worldview that we do. If they're in business, they want to make money. If the currency is collapsing, you go through a hyperinflation and nobody wants it, they'll take whatever has value to put food
that's if the government doesn't shut the mom and pop businesses down. Like we saw during the pandemic, that they let the big stores stay open, but the little mom and pop shops and restaurants had to close. Many of them went bankrupt. So, I mean, that's all they have to do. Just get rid of them. And you have your major, conglomerations that are working for you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing that we can really do to stop some of that stuff, right? But at least by owning a tangible asset, it gives you a chance, right? If you're still digital, you pretty much don't have a chance. Well, they can cut you off from using it at all. And they're going to know your ideology. They're going to know by what you spend your money on, what you think about, who you are, who you support, all of that stuff, which is why starting to move into a private transaction world makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, there is no perfect solution. There's truly not. But a tangible asset's going to be safer than a digital asset, because at least it's private. Where they're going to know the rest of the details about you, right? But at least you're still going to have some semblance of privacy with your money.
I heard a story, and I don't remember the details, but a woman who cashed out her Bitcoins, and she somehow she transferred it to her bank account, and when she wanted to pull the money, the bank would not release her money because they said, well, where did you get the money for the Bitcoin? How did you come about having all this money from Bitcoin? Like, she had to prove, and she couldn't prove. So in a case like that, I don't know. Do you want to comment on it?
Well, there's a billionaire investor from Germany who had money in an HSBC bank in Shanghai. So he wanted his money out. I mean, realize a billionaire investor, not just some kind of a Jane Doe, right? Well, it's just a little bit like maybe small amounts like you or I would have, right? A billionaire. Well, they wouldn't let him get his money out. They said, unless you can provide proof of the funds for 20 years, not going to let you out. It's like, what? 20 years? It's like, who has that kind of record keeping, right? It's like, but he probably couldn't prove it all. So I don't think he got it all out, right? So this is the weird rules that they're going to come up with control to make sure you and your money divorce each other and you're not going to have access to it.
When we talk about digital currency, is it something that each country is going to have their own, or is it going to be one world currency?
Both, actually. So every country or maybe trading bloc like the BRICS nations are going to be issuing a central bank digital currency. Now it's going to move into, I believe, would be an umbrella cryptocurrency. So the IMF has basically issued theirs. It's called the Unicoin, right? So not unicorn, but Unicoin, right? Which is their version of central bank digital currency. All these other central bank digital currencies around the globe will kind of feed into that system to ultimately, I think we do only have one. But it's in public policy, you have to take incremental steps. It's like the old adage, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time, right? Because you have to have some kind of a common chord, a common thread from policy initiative to policy initiative to get the public to buy off on it. So if we went from paper currency to one global cryptocurrency that has the ability to cut you off from buying or selling, like the Unicoin, there's nothing in common with that. The people, it's too big of a leap. The people would revolt. They wouldn't like it. It probably doesn't pass or gain acceptance. But if you start this out with let's say you go from a paper money to like a gold-backed dollar. It's like, okay, now what's the common thread? The dollar, right? You just added gold to it. Well, now you move to a central bank digital currency. Now we're going to do a central bank digital currency backed by gold. It's like, what's the common thread? Gold to gold, right? So you're moving from completely fiat to fiat backed by something to digital backed by something, then to just complete digital, right? So I think this is the progression that you're going to take, because if you don't take those smaller incremental steps, and I'm not saying that some of those incremental steps are bad, like a gold-backed dollar would be amazing, but the globalist agenda will take something that's amazing and make it bad, but because they think that they can get public acceptance from it. It's just like moving towards a central bank digital currency. Because what if I were to tell you, it's like, hey, and let's pretend I work for the United Nations or the World Bank or something like that. It's like, have I got a deal for you? We're going to start a central bank digital currency, which is a government-run bank that has digital assets, and we have the ability to cut you off from buying or selling if we don't like you. It's like, what? Why would I want that? But that's what they're selling everybody, right? So the only way to get people to accept what they're selling is to create a crisis that's so bad that people will give up their freedoms in exchange for perceived peace, right? Banking failures, pandemic, people not being separated from their money because you've got wage decline and job losses, and people can't afford to feed their babies, and inflationary pressures are going through the roof. And now they've got rising interest rates to slow down that inflation. People say, man, I can't even afford to live. Would you please fix it, government? Would you please fix it? In fact, my bank just failed. I don't even have access to my bank account anymore, right? So you create a system that's so bad that people will want what you have. Now, they also have one big hurdle, and that is the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, want to be the world's reserve currency. They're stripping the US dollar of its petrodollar status. They're actually, just 2 days ago, the IMF said country can actually pay off debt to another country with renminbi, the Chinese internal currency. The yuan is their external currency, instead of the US dollar. So piece by piece by piece, they're dismantling the US dollar from the world reserve currency status, which means what? Means there's a void. They can fill it with theirs, but you have to kick the big kid out of the sandbox first, which is what they're doing. I mean, they're playing a brilliant,
which is America.
Yeah, with
right?
America. Yeah.
You know, I remember that when the United States went to war with Saddam Hussein, there was rumors, I don't know, but they were saying that the real reason was because bin Laden has nothing to do with Iraq. And, you know, if they were going after bin Laden after you know, the Twin Towers went down, etc., then why are they hitting Iraq? But the thing is that they had to create this, like you said, emergency, that they've got weapons of mass destruction, which they never found. And it was the reason that they went against Saddam Hussein was because he was threatening to stop trading with the dollar, with his oil, and America was not going to have it. But now with Biden at the helm and the leftists, it looks like that's exactly, they want to destroy America. They want to bring America and Americans to its knees so that they, as you said, can implement their policy. Oh, you want us to come in and save you? Well, give up your guns, baby. You know, you can't have guns. Get with the program. You know, you're gonna have to trade your dollar, is nobody respects it anymore. So we're gonna go to the, just basically, if you're down on your knees begging, they could demand whatever they want, and you're probably gonna take it because you are on your knees begging.
Right. No, it's 100% true. And throughout history, it doesn't make people good or bad, right? It's just human nature. People will willingly give up freedoms in exchange for perceived security and safety. Doesn't even need to be real, just needs to be perceived. This is how Hitler, one of the worst dictators, most evil people to ever rule a country, came to power. Because after World War I, you know, Germany was the big kid on the block. They were like the America of the day. They had bombed the living daylights out of other countries, and they basically thought they won. And then the Treaty of Versailles came in and said, hey, you have to repay your war debts. And they said, what? We can't repay our war debts. It's like, we thought we won this thing, right? It's like, no, you have to repay your war debts. So they abandoned the gold standard on the mark at the time. It was called the Renton mark, and it turned into the mark, but they abandoned the gold standard. They printed without discretion. They had inflation that was so bad, like millions of percent a year, that people had to pay. You know, they were giving their babies, leaving them on doorsteps of fire stations, right? They couldn't feed their babies. So then what? Society was in chaos. Here marches in Hitler, new young upcoming politician, and he campaigned on this promise of hope and change and said, hey, Germany, vote me in, I'll take care of you. We'll get rid of this mess. Really? You will? Yeah, we'll get rid of it. So without holding a gun to their head, one of the worst dictators, one of the most evil people who exterminated millions of people, became to power because of an economic crisis where people willingly voted him in. See, they will willingly give up freedoms in exchange for a perceived security or safety.
Right. I want to ask you about, I want you to kind of like close this now, in that the trend. Do you hear a dog barking?
No.
You don't? Okay. Fine. I have a window on this side and somebody brought a dog there. I don't know. All right. You have the world, and we see what's happening in China with the social credit score system, where they're, as you were saying, that they're judging you on how you make purchases, what you're buying, how you're living your life. They have snitches, just like they did in the Soviet Union. They're downstairs in the building by the mailboxes, and if they hear somebody saying, why is the mail always so late, they write it down and they report you because you're saying something bad about the government and the mail, that's slow, you're complaining. And these snitches have to, I mean, this is what I've seen in documentaries. These snitches have to have like at least 20 things to submit each week. Otherwise, they're going to get into trouble. So they're always trying to find some of them people. It's just like the Soviet Union. If we indeed are going that direction, because the governments and or the power elite can have control over people. And as you said, if they don't like your carbon footprint, if they don't like that you, donate towards a certain political party, or you're saying bad things that they don't like, maybe it's not bad what you're saying, but they don't like it, then they can dock you off. They tax you, or oh, you used too much gasoline, you traveled too much this week. All right, well, now you've just lost 10 points on your social credit score, or whatever it is. So nobody in the free world wants that. So my question to you is, if that's where the trend is going, how do we stop it? Besides buying gold and silver, how do we just stop this?
I don't think you can stop it, but I think you can run parallel with it, right? This is where the states coming up with state chartered banks to get out of the system. Talk to your elected officials and say, don't vote for this garbage, right? Just don't. Or you could possibly, I think there's going to be systems of some other cryptocurrency, blockchain that'll come up to run parallel with central bank digital currency. I think there'll be choices, but the way you stop it is you don't stop it. You just participate in something that is actually going to give you more safety, because I think they're too far down the runway to actually stop it. But it doesn't mean that it's the only game in town, right? So that's where, talk to your elected officials, have them start voting against these horrible things, because then once it comes in, it's going to be very hard to get rid of it. Things like gold and silver for barter, things like a state chartered bank, or any bank that's not tied into the federal system of central bank digital currency, of FDIC insurance, and so forth. I think all of those are viable options to start protecting piece by piece by piece to get out of that path. But I don't think you're going to stop it at this point.
Let me ask you about countries that it may not be in their interest to go along with this program. Let's say you have these Islamic countries who hate the West. They want nothing to do with the West. They want to destroy the West. And they're not going to go along with it. And they're not afraid to go out, and if they're not afraid to strap bombs to their kids and send them out to die, they're not afraid to be crazy and be suicide bombers themselves, to go and try to hurt this, to bring their Mahdi, whatever it is. I mean, a lot of people say that we're in the end of days, that we're in the Messianic era. The Muslims believe it, Christians, Jews, etc. How would the power elite today rein in these Islamic countries that would not want to cooperate with the West?
Well, I think the BRICS nations are reining them in. I mean, they've already basically bringing Saudi Arabia and UAE into the BRICS nations to control the oil, right? To bring resources into this to make their currency look stronger. But now you've got Israel. I'm sorry, not Israel, India. India is pulling out of the BRICS nations in support of the common BRICS currency, because the rupee is doing actually quite well, right? So they say, why would we join this common currency, right? We've got a massive population. We have over 1 billion people. We're just going to trade on our own. Kind of like when the Eurozone became the European community and the United Kingdom didn't participate, right? They said, no, the British pound is going to stay the British pound. We're not going to the euro. India just did the same thing. Right. So there's already starting to be fracturization in that movement. And you're going to have countries that don't recognize a BRICS central bank digital currency. Right. So we are starting to see grassroots level opposition against these programs. But I don't know how, I think the ideological difference between the Muslim faith and a lot of the West, we're starting to see that, like in Canada, for example. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, is really kind of in the hot seat right now, because he's been very much in support of the transgender community and of the Muslim community both. Now, the Muslim community is saying, you got to pick a side here, because we're not in support of the transgender community as a religion, right? So who are you? You can't play both sides of this. You either pick them or you pick us, right? So it's like, pickle for the Prime Minister of Canada, right? So I don't know which way he's going to choose given an ultimatum like that, because either way you lose large voting blocks, right? It's like, well, what do you do, right? And So you're going to start to see ideological differences on religious or personal values start to rise up. And once somebody with power or somebody or a trading block of people says, we're just not going to play, you vote with your feet, you vote with your wallets, right? But in the terms of the Islamic faith, going against Trudeau and saying, we don't like your social policies, pick a side, right? It's like, ooh, now what? Are we going to have jihad in our country if I pick the transgender community? Or if you don't, I mean, you don't pick the transgender community, you're going to have social unrest through every city in your country, right? It's like, what are you going to do? Well, you can't play both sides. This is the political pickle that they're in. And I think you're going to see that across the boards here. It's like, well, these high interest rates are usury, right? That's against a lot of faith-based decisions around the world. You can't have usury. You can't take advantage of people. You can't, there's no kindness in that. It's not even part of old religious laws, right? So there's going to be a lot of things that come up that we're going to start to see differences on, and people fleeing a system that they thought was a done deal, right? But I don't think it's going to be that easy.
So to summarize everything, you're saying that whether we like it or not, it's a fate, complete. How do you say it?
Complete. Yeah.
That we're going towards that direction of digital currency. Cash is going to be out. The only way that we can perhaps get around it is to buy gold, silver, tangible assets, and just try to make the best of it. Just try to weather this new reality that's coming our way the best we can. That's all we can do.
Yeah, for now, it's the best thing to do. It's the easiest thing to do. I mean, in time, other things will manifest themselves and other things that we can do, but low-lying fruit, something easy to do. It's just reallocation of funds. You send a wire, you cut a check, you get tangible assets. At least you're starting to piecemeal together a plan financially to actually navigate through this crisis and not be part of their system.
And when you buy tangible assets, I think it's important to say that it should be purchased from a company that actually sends you the gold and silver and you have it in your hands, rather than a company that says, well, we're opening up an account for you and it's in this cloud account, because then you don't have it in your hands, right?
That's one option. I mean, I store mine, but it's a lifestyle choice. I'm too busy to have to box it up and ship it back, right? But so there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a logistical consideration for each individual person. But all else being equal, having it on you would probably be safer than having it stored someplace, unless you live in a bad neighborhood, right? Those sounds like, because I've got clients say, Kirk, you have no idea where I live. I don't want anything of value on me. I'm going to get robbed. I have to have it stored, right? So, but in an IRA or retirement account, it has to be stored, because if you took delivery of it, it would be a distribution out of that becomes a taxable event if it's allowed at all. So if you store it in a retirement account, at least you're participating in the positive trend into something that's real, something that's tangible, something that's not a digital asset in their digital world.
Wow. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to talk about?
No, I mean, we covered a lot of ground today. I mean, really the bigger overarching issue is we are losing our financial freedom. And if we lose our financial freedom, we'll lose our religious freedom, we'll lose our political freedom, we'll lose our economic freedom, we'll lose our health freedom, right? They're all tied at the hip. You lose one of them, you lose them all. It's like, Kirk, that's not true. Yeah, it is. If you lose your political freedom, you probably lose your religious and personal freedoms. If you lose your religious freedoms, well, you're not going to have good politicians with a moral code, right? You lose your political freedoms and everything else. I mean, they're all tied together. We lose one of them, we lose all of them. And that's what we're on the cliff, the edge of that cliff of.
But you're saying it's going to happen anyway.
Yep, which means we have to start taking matters into our own hands and protecting, which is why I am so gung-ho shouting from the rooftops to anybody that will listen, tangible assets, because it's real. It's a thing. It's not tied to debt. And you can, in a worst case scenario, you can use it for barter. Best case scenario, it just goes up like it has been. I mean, silver's up over 110% in the last 3 years. It's averaging over 35% a year. That's amazing growth. Outside of all the cataclysmic things that we're talking about, it's just a good investment right now.
Well, I think that a lot of the people watching this interview, they're going to be saying, I don't like what the future has in store for us. And our children are going to have to live in that world. It's going to be completely different. But as you said, we should not just sit and do nothing. We should try to take steps and protect ourselves and our freedoms as much as possible. And you're saying to get tangible assets, gold, silver, etc. Try to have it and try to use it if the need be. Yeah. All right. Well, Dr. Kirk Elliott, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. If anybody wants to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
So 2 places you can go to our website, kirkelliottphd.com. That's 2 L's and 2 T's. Or you can just simply give our office a phone call, 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900. It's the only 2 ways to get in touch with our office, right? There's a lot of people impersonating me on the internet.
Oh, wow.
Spelling the last name wrong with 1 L and 2 T's or 2 L's and 1 T.
That's scary.
And giving away some fake emails. It's like, oh, Dr. Kirk is giving out his personal email. Call him direct, email him directly. It's like, that's not me. I don't give that out.
Yeah. Can I have your bank account number, please?
I mean, that's
so I
where
can help you.
That's where it goes. And it's like, so kirkelliottphd.com with 2 L's and 2 T's, or our direct phone line. We will talk to you. If you ever reach out and you think this doesn't sound right, they won't even talk to me. They'll only email. Well, that's not us, because we talk to everybody, right? So, and that number is 720-605-3900.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I wish us all a very good, prosperous, and free future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was great spending time with you today.
Thank you. Hey everyone, to make sure you can get access to all of our interviews, make sure to hit the subscribe button on both our YouTube and Rumble channels. Your click makes us all stronger. Thanks.